Any questions before we start on what I've covered? Kind of the history of the prophets, wayshowers. I think it's neat to call them wayshowers because some people are so polarized. In the Bible, there's like 250 some odd quotes, give or take, about prophets, true prophets. Yet anybody, you mention prophet now, even though God has prophets since the beginning of time, what's the word knee-jerk? False. And that's somebody famous, probably the Pope or somebody famous someday in the end times. It's just in Revelation. But 200, I think it's 250, 54, 46. Most of those quotes are true prophets. It's all through the Bible. But people just knee-jerk, hear the word prophet, and they think false. But that means they're not ready. That's fine. A lot of people see a prophet just as a person, nothing special. And as a person, just the individual has the same challenges as anybody. But the spiritual part that God ordains can do a lot for you. But the regular person has struggles and hobbies and loses hair and needs glasses and gets old, catches colds, has the same challenge in life as anybody else does. And if people focus too much on the man side of a prophet rather than the spiritual, they don't see anything about you. And usually it means they don't see their own divinity. But you don't tell them that because they wouldn't understand. And if somebody focuses too much on the spiritual side or the God-man side, you might call it, then if a prophet does something like eats meat or doesn't wear sandals or doesn't grow a beard, they couldn't really be a prophet. Or if he does something that disappoints people, which will happen eventually, then they fall apart. So this isn't part of the talk today, but it's nice to realize that regular people have regular challenges, put their clothes on, get hungry, get sick, get old, makes mistakes or whatever as a person. See that side in balance with the spiritual side. It's both. If you focus too much on the man's side, you don't see anybody worth talking to. If you focus on the spiritual side, the man's side will eventually disappoint you. So you want to find a balance. It's a little bit of both. Anyway, okay, back to our topic. As a student of a Wayshower, recognize the gifts and blessings. I mentioned this earlier. You hopefully will start developing gratitude. I'm going to mention several keys in the Spiritual Keys book. Spiritual Keys for a More Abundant Life. This is loaded with spiritual principles. Keys that open up heaven, keys that open your heart, keys that open up opportunities. It's full of stuff. The other thing it's full of is practical religion. I'd say the first half of this book, although the spiritual principles, in a sheriff couple, like gratitude, whether you believe in God or not, being a grateful person opens your heart. People don't like being around grumpy people. You're probably more nice to be around. Just you're a better person. So a lot of the things in the book that are spiritual keys are just very practical ways to have a more abundant life. But it's basically designed for people that love God. So you develop gratitude, you might want to look at the key in there and study gratitude. The one who's grateful is the one that's blessed. And it could be grateful to meet God or grateful for a cup of coffee or for a pet that welcomes you when you come in the door. It doesn't matter the value or the so-called level of gift. If you're grateful for even the most ridiculous, mundane things, it opens your heart. And if we're on a path of love, which Wayshowers, that mountain, that trail up the mountain is a path of love. It may be rough, but it's a path of love. It's all about giving and receiving love, God's love, and passing it on. Anytime a prophet gives you a suggestion, it's motivated by love. It may take a while to figure that out, but that's true. So the key, gratitude, is something really important. If you're going to stay a student of a prophet, to develop an attitude of gratitude, it's just a good thing in life. And it's something you can learn. Maybe start with a gratitude journal. And once a day, write something you're grateful for. While I'm alive. My boss didn't fire me. And then you start, well, the smell of coffee somebody brought me in the morning. That was pretty cool, thank you. Or your pets, it could be anything. And everybody, I would say most people, could develop an attitude of gratitude. So you might review the key. That's really important. Without gratitude, you'll never develop a relationship with profit. So I'll give you a couple more keys and then tie them together. The next one, you want to remember were the blessings of God, who delivers them, who actually hands them to you, passes them on. Some come directly from the Heavenly Father, but a lot of them, if you're a student of prophet, come from the Heavenly Father, but delivered by his Wayshower, his prophet. And then there's a key in spiritual keys called remembrance. I give you two scenarios. One, you're grateful one day and then you totally forget. And then the next day prophet does something and you're grateful, then you totally forget. Versus you're grateful and over weeks and months and years, you remember most of them. Maybe not all of them. You try to have remembrance of the ones. So you have all these things. You see the hand of God through his prophet. Prophet is the hand of God, literally. So you see all these blessings and you tend to remember them somewhat. What would that do for building trust and a relationship with prophet? Be a plus the first case where you forget, or would be more of a plus where you tend to remember at least most of them? Remember. The latter. So again, the more trust you develop with prophet, the more a prophet is allowed to help you because you become more receptive. So if you develop gratitude for things of God, but delivered by prophet, large amount of them, and you'd have the key gratitude, now the key remembrance, and you remember the bulk of them, and you keep a journal. You go back and review, and you kind of start doubting the prophet, and you see all these blessings that were delivered by a prophet. That could build a relationship into that sacred, where you recognize the sacredness, okay? The next thing would be, let's see. Of course, you stay nourished, your daily bread, that's foundational. You have gratitude, and then you have remembrance. What were the things I said you want to develop with prophet? Trust and love over time. With those three things, gratitude, stay nourished, and remembrance, help you build that trust. And the more you trust, one of the key things for a student of a prophet, number one probably, I said this I think in another talk one time, it just came to me, and I think I'll stick by it because I haven't got anything different, is your degree of receptiveness is gigantic. If you're real receptive, prophet can accelerate your growth if that's right for you. If you're not receptive, a prophet backs off his teachings, maybe some experiences he holds back because you're not receptive. You're not going to just waste them or cause a problem. So the more receptive, the better the relationship. So that's why I said if you develop gratitude and you remember some of the blessings as you start seeing them, you stay nourished first of all, and remember the blessings. So you have this big pile of stuff you're grateful for. You're going to build more trust in your relationship with prophet. You'll trust things because there's come a time, at first you go, yeah, I agree. You agree with everything. It's just getting the foundation. And then a prophet, a Wayshower, will tell you something you never heard of, or totally contrary to an orthodox teaching. And then you start having a problem. You might walk. If you've developed a lot of trust over a year, are you more likely, if you hear something awkward or uncomfortable, doesn't meet your sensibilities, and a lot won't. A lot of the stuff down here is not right on, and a prophet brings you stuff that's right. Let's say it bruises your ego a bit, or your sensibilities. If you have a long remembrance of gratitude where prophets blessed you, blessings of God delivered by prophet, are you more likely to give prophet the benefit of the doubt and work through it rather than just closing your heart and ending your journey in this lifetime? I would say probably you're more likely. So the other thing, because you're going to struggle with stuff. If I tell you the same things you already know, you might as well go somewhere else. You're going to hear things that your head might spin around a little bit. But I won't tell you until we build a relationship, until I give you enough fundamentals, like multiple lifetimes. Head spins around. But once I spend more time and show you and give you experiences like the mirror, the eternal you is soul. that comes in the body. If you can do it once, when the body wears out, why can't I do it again? And again, and again, and again. And God gives us many incarnations to learn what we need to learn. You cannot do it in one lifetime. So at first your head spins around, but after you learn about soul and start getting okay with that, then I would mention more past lives. Otherwise, I wouldn't mention it for a while. But there's two parts of you, your eternal self, soul, that's pretty receptive. Soul hears truth, and will find truth that's truth detector. But generally, soul, your heart, soul, kind of a truth, something a prophet may share that's unusual or different. Your heart sometimes will feel okay with, but your brain's struggling, or lower self. Remember, I'm talking to your brain and your higher self, if it's nourished. So there's a key in here, understanding change. And I think I mentioned that key. The brain generally doesn't like change. Even though, how do you grow? Don't want to change, but I want to grow. You see a problem with that. To grow requires change. And a lot of change is good. I guess our brains just don't like change. Soul doesn't mind change. It's been around for eons. It's used to change. So another thing, as a student, if you decide to be a student and you're accepted by a prophet, as you start growing, you're going to hear things that you may shake your head a bit at first. If you have a good relationship and you built some trust through gratitude and remembrance, hopefully you won't let your brain in charge. Remember, soul is the real you. So the brain struggles sometimes with new stuff. The higher self's going, yes, man, I knew that. Your heart's going, yes, man, I always felt that was true, but nobody would tell me. So you're going to have this pull. Your higher self's going, man, finally somebody said what I've always felt all along. I never heard that in church, but I felt it was true. And your brain's going, get out of here, he's crazy. Run, run, run. And you're going to have to work with that. Generally, a prophet will not share more than you can handle. But you're going to be pushed. If you wanted, I used to work out a lot. Obviously, I don't anymore much. Enough to do up here on the farm, though. But I used to do a lot of stuff. And how would I be able to do more push-ups? By doing the same? At the Naval Academy, I was class of 72. 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times a day, upperclassmen yell at you because I was, the plebe, the freshman. I'd have to hit the deck and do, my class is 72. How many push-ups would I have to do? 72. I'm glad I wasn't in the class of 75. Or 90. Oh, I pity those four suckers. But how do you grow in weightlifting? Or you stretch. If you're doing pull-ups, you do 5, and you stretch. How do you grow spiritually? You stretch. You're going to hear things from a prophet, if they're a real prophet, that's going to stretch you. And if that pushes you out right away, well, we'll see you some other time. And just realize what might resonate with your heart may be confusing up here. If you have a good relationship with prophets won't make you believe anything. But it's good if you at least sit on it for a while. Don't run off. Just sit on it and give a prophet like me, for example, time to prove it to you. It may take weeks or months. But at least stay open. Don't just say, that sucks. That's not true. Okay? Or that's not what I heard in church. If you're going to grow up the mountain, the churches get you partway up the mountain, like in my parable of a spiritual journey on YouTube, but they only take you so far. And now we're getting on a narrower trail where you need a guide, like going up Mount Everest. Almost anybody could get to the base camp. You got all kinds of people. But man, that you get up those higher and higher base camps, less and less people, smaller and smaller base camps. And I would hate to see somebody hear something that they didn't hear before, and they just steam out and lose a golden opportunity. So why do we trust the heart more, soul? Because if it's nourished, it tends to know it's very receptive to the teachings of God. It's been around for a very long time. It's made of God's light and sound, so would it be receptive to the voice of God? It's made of the same stuff. The light and sound of God say it's coming down in a waterfall, and you take a little melon ball scoop out an individualized chunk of it. That's what you are. So you can trust your higher self, heart, we say sometimes, is very receptive to a wayshower, especially if it's nourished, where your mind might struggle sometimes. But if you're not pushed, you're not growing. If you don't do more push-ups or pull-ups, you're not going to get better. So I think that's important to put out early on. I'd hate to lose somebody serious about wanting to go up the mountain, and the first thing that doesn't meet their sensibilities that they don't agree with or different than a preacher told them, I hate to have you leave if this is what you want. That's true with any prophet, me or past ones and future ones. Speaking of past ones, it seems like every religion out there thinks their prophet was the last. And I won't name them, but you have a teacher and then the religions found around that teacher, the world religions. Do they ever think there's anybody past their guy? And Jesus is our guy. He's awesome. But God still has prophets coming. And Jesus took mankind up a huge amount, and we're still blessed by those teachings and what's in Scripture, what others wrote that were back then. But God now wants some new information out. Nobody in Jesus' time, how much did the Father, Jesus knew the Father. He was literally the Father's Son. How many times in the Bible does God speak? 2 or 3 times in a cloud or something? This is my beloved Son or whatever. I think on the mountain of transfiguration. How many times do you hear God speak up here in your inner travels? Almost every time, don't you? So there's more going on now. What are we building on? The teachings of God that Jesus brought out. We're building on that beautiful foundation, but there's more. That didn't take mankind all the way up the mountain. It took them up in the foothills, way above earlier teachings. Way beyond what Rama even put out. But you don't get much past the foothills of the mountain, the lower area of the mountain, in a big group. It's kind of a single file up these trails where you need a guide. So I give you need prolonged determination. This is not a quick fix, like eating an elephant. It would take a while, one bite at a time, one day at a time, staying nourished, starting to build gratitude for prophet and remember it so it helps you build trust. So when you hear something that pushes the trust button, you're not sure, you've got enough data to go, oh, well, everything else he said worked out. I'll give him a benefit of the doubt for a while. At least sit on it instead of just running for the hills. Because you're going to be pushed. Your buttons will be pushed. That's how you grow. You get to see things you never heard about. Okay, and each prophet through history pushes buttons. Annoys people, but some people benefit that hang in there, that build the trust. And then anything I teach you, I'll eventually find a way to prove it to you. But it may take a while. Okay? So that would help the relationship with the prophet if you cut them slack when you're not sure. A lot will be really obvious. You go, yeah, of course. But when you get something you're not so sure, instead of damaging the relationship, just give it time. And then weeks or months or years later, you don't get it, you don't like it, you can do something then. But don't be too quick to judge what I would suggest. Okay? And the mind does struggle. How many in here agree with the mind can struggle early on? Look around. Yeah. But have you learned that it was always in your best interest? How did your heart feel about stuff sometimes, if it's nourished? When your mind struggled, did anybody have experiences where your higher self, your heart said, no, that's truth? A lot of you. I see a lot of heads nodding, yeah. So, but it's got to be nourished. You got to keep soul nourished for that daily spiritual bread. That'll be really important if you want to succeed on this path. And I'm pointing out some pitfalls. There's probably a lot, but I want to cover some of them. I'll just repeat what I wrote here. There would be little growth if you only heard what you already knew. But when you hear new stuff, that's when it sometimes rub you the wrong way. Sometimes you're not sure. Sometimes you're confused. That's to be expected. So don't overreact would be a suggestion. Good advice for the old timers, for the new folks? Yeah, assuming you even want this.